Hi everyone, my name is Rahana and I'm on the success team here at RAMP. Today we'll focus on connecting QuickBooks Desktop to RAMP. We'll cover the following topics: how to import your chart of accounts and additional lists to RAMP, how to code your transactions, how to import your transactions to QuickBooks Desktop, and lastly, the different export types that we have available here at RAMP. We'll start in QuickBooks Desktop, so I'll go ahead and share my screen of my QuickBooks Desktop account. You should all now be able to see my QuickBooks Desktop account. Before we go ahead and import your chart of accounts and additional lists, we do require you to create a RAMP card liability account to post credits to when accounting for RAMP card transactions across your entire business. So we'll need this liability account to be in your chart of accounts as well as a bank and accounts payable account. So let's go ahead and create this together. On QuickBooks Desktop, the first thing you'll want to make sure is that you're signed in as single user mode, which you can double check if you click on Files, and you can scroll down here. If it says Switch to single user mode, go ahead and click on that. If it says Switch to multi-user mode, that means you're in the right spot. Next, in order to create this liability account, we'll want to open your chart of accounts. So we'll go ahead and go and click into that. And now we'll want to go down to Accounts on the bottom left and click on the drop-down arrow towards the right, click New, and this you'll want to be selecting Credit Card, and then you'll want to click Continue. This will then open up a window where you can name your account. As a best practice at RAMP, we do recommend naming this liability account RAMP card, so it's easy to see where your transactions are going toward. Now, these fields below here are optional for you to fill out, so completely up to you should you decide that you want to fill these out. If all looks well, you're good to go ahead and click Save and Continue. So now you'll notice that there is a RAMP card liability account here under credit card as type. So now that we created a liability account for your RAMP transactions, we'll import your chart of accounts and any additional lists that you are using to code your transactions. The way to do that is to go on to File, and then you go to Utilities and scroll over to Export, and then scroll over to List to IIF files. A quick note here is that RAMP is only able to pull in your chart of accounts, your customer list, your vendor list, and your class list. So we'll want to select your chart of accounts as well as any of these three lists that you are using to currently code your transactions. So once we export these lists or select them to export, we can click OK. And now this will prompt us to save an IIF file, which we will name and save in an easily accessible area. So we'll name this RAMP list, and we can save it on our desktop. This little dialog box will pop up as soon as you have successfully exported your information. You could go ahead and press OK here. So we're now ready to import this information into RAMP. So I'm going to go ahead and switch my screen over to the RAMP platform and head to the Accounting tab. So now that we're on the same page, we're going to go ahead and click right into the Accounting tab, and now click Get Started. And then we're going to click right into QuickBooks Desktop IIF Export. You'll notice that there's one required step here. We'll want to click on Import Chart of Accounts and Lists, as we've already exported that information from QuickBooks Desktop, and we want to upload that into RIP. You'll notice how on the right-hand side, there's a dialog box that popped up asking if you've created a RAMP liability account. As we just went ahead and created that, we'll go ahead and check off this box here, and then this drop box will appear. This is where you'll want to upload the IAF file containing your chart of accounts and any additional lists that you'll use to code your transactions. So we could click right into it and choose the IAF file that we just saved with all of our chart of accounts and the additional lists, and we'll click open. Once it uploads into RAMP, you'll notice that it pops up on the right-hand side. You'll want to just do a quick review to make sure everything is populating correctly. So all the categories from your chart of accounts are available, including all the categories from your vendor and customer job, as well as class, if you imported those lists. If anything looks like it's off, you can always click on Import a new IAF file to import a new list. But if all looks well, we can go ahead and click Save and Continue. Now you'll notice that it has brought you to a step asking you to link your liability account. As we have already created this, we could click on the drop-down, and we named this liability account RAMP card so we could easily decipher, and we could click right into it. Once we click RAMP card as our liability account for our transactions to export towards, we'll go ahead and click Save and Continue. You'll also notice this green check mark here. This green check mark just indicates that you have now successfully uploaded your chart of accounts as well as any additional lists that you will be using. So in order to now go ahead and successfully complete your accounting setup, we'll want to walk through coding your expenses. So we'll click right into that, and you will now notice a button in yellow towards the right that says Configure to Export. This button helps you connect all of your default accounts, and in order to successfully set up accounting, we'll need to complete this portion. So we could go ahead and click right into it, and you'll notice that this area is segmented by statement accounts, reimbursement accounts, and bill pay accounts. We'll go ahead and set everything up one by one. So for your credit card liability account, as I mentioned earlier, we already created RAMP card as a liability account, so we could click on the drop-down and select RAMP card. Now scrolling down towards reimbursements, we'll want to select the cash account corresponding with the bank account that you currently have connected to RAMP as your main autopay source. So this checking account is my inventory asset account within my QuickBooks, so I'll go ahead and click right into that. And then your AP account for reimbursements to post to. This could be an existing accounts payable account that you already have within your chart of accounts. We could go ahead and click on the drop down and click right into the accounts payable account. Now scrolling down with bill pay, it is a similar process to the reimbursements process where we're going to select the bank account that you have connected as your main autopay source. And we're going to select the same cash account that corresponds to this bank account selected. So as I mentioned earlier, in this case, it is my inventory asset account, so I went ahead and selected that. For AP account for bills, you can choose the same AP account for reimbursements. So we can click on the drop down and click on accounts payable. This is where all of your bills will get posted to. Once we fill out all of these areas here, we can go ahead and click Save Changes. We have now successfully completed the accounting setup. Now let's go on ahead and walk through how to code your expenses. So when you are looking at this entire accounting tab here, you'll notice that all transactions that do not have a category filled out will be highlighted in red. In order to mark the transaction as ready to export over, this area will need to be filled out. You can do this by selecting the drop-down on the right-hand side of the box and selecting the proper value here by typing to search. So I know a lot of you might have some lengthy chart of accounts, so rather than scrolling here, you can always type and search. So for example, lodging here is, Aloft here is under lodging, so we could categorize this towards travel. So travel expenses here, we could always also type it in and it'll pop up. So we could click right into it. You may have also noticed that this dialog box popped up here to the right. This is asking you if you'd like to create a rule. A rule within RAMP is a great way that allows you to close your books faster by automating your accounting. So you can go ahead and click Create Rule, but for today, we're going to go ahead and explore the different rules that we have available at RAMP. If you click on the drop-down, and let's click Dismiss here. If you click on the drop-down again, you'll notice that next to each category, there's a little lightning bolt that says Create Rule. We could click right into it and then click Show More Options, and this will show you all the rules that you can create within RAMP. So the merchant rule, this is pertaining to the vendor itself that the transaction was made with. The category here is referring to Visa's MCC codes as we are on the Visa network. What that means is this business, so Aloft in this case, registered themselves with Visa as a lodging category. So that is the information we pull as a RAMP category. Then we have the department and location rules, which are based on the departments that you set within RAMP and the locations that you set within RAMP. Lastly, we have the card rule here, and card rules are great for when you are using the same card with the same vendor at all times. Then over here, it lets you select the accounting category, which will be your chart of account. So for today, we'll go ahead and create a rule based off of the category of lodging. So anytime any transaction comes through going forward into my RAMP account and it's under the category of lodging, it'll automatically get coded to travel expense. So let's go ahead and click Create Rule, and then you'll be able to see all of these transactions that fall under the category of lodging automatically get coded to travel expense. And these little lightning bolts indicate that a rule was created. You're also always able to click on the drop-down and change and select a different category should this rule category not meet the standard requirements for you. So now that we've gone over how to code transactions, let's go ahead and walk through how to export them to QuickBooks Desktop. The goal is to have this entire accounting tab to be blank, which means that all transactions have been coded and exported to your accounting provider. Once you export a transaction, it will disappear from this page. You don't want any transactions uncoded lingering here at the end of your month-end close. So after you fill out the category here, you'll notice that there's a couple more columns over to the right. We have vendor, class, and customer/shop. What you can do is also click on the drop down and fill out these and even create a rule if you'd like here. So here, it's not matching to any vendor for me. I'm going to go ahead and leave these fields blank as I don't need them for my journal entries purpose. So if all looks well, you can go ahead and mark a transaction as ready by clicking on Mark Ready. You'll also notice that some of these are grayed out, and that is because we have not selected a category for those transactions yet. So the ones that have the category filled out already, we can mark those as ready. So So this is how you would mark a single transaction as ready by clicking on Mark Ready. And you'll also notice that this button over here to the right went from gray to yellow and has the number 2. This just means that we have 2 transactions that are ready to export over to QuickBooks Desktop. Another way to bulk mark ready for transactions is to go ahead and utilize these checkboxes over to the left. So we could just click check here and a check here, and we could always go ahead and click mark ready on the bottom right here, and this will mark those 2 transactions as ready, thus bringing up our export number to 4. So once you go ahead and press export over here to the right, this opens up another window of review for you. If all looks well, you can go ahead and export your information, but should you ever have to make a change here for, let's say, the category, you could always uncheck this green checkbox here, and this will bring it back to the RAMP accounting page. If you did that by mistake, no worries. You could always click undo and bring it right back. So all these transactions look great to me. And another quick note here is transactions do export over fully coded, so there's no need to take any action on the other side with QuickBooks Desktop. And if you do want to ever update a transaction after it's already been coded and exported over, you will need to do that within QuickBooks Desktop, given that RAMP has already passed over that information. So now that we're ready to export these transactions over, let's go ahead and explore the different file types that we have to export your transactions. First, we have exporting over as an IIF file. To import an IIF file, a user will need to have administrator or external accountant privileges within QuickBooks Desktop. When an IIF file is downloaded, it can be uploaded into QuickBooks Desktop from the Utilities menu, and we could go about it in that sense. So as an example, let's go ahead and export these 4 transactions as an IIF file. So now we have it saved in our downloads. You'll also get nice little confetti once you go ahead and make your first export. So in order to upload those transactions into QuickBooks Desktop after we've exported them as an IIF file, we can go ahead and go back to QuickBooks Desktop, and then we're going to go to File, Utilities, and this time we're going to click on Import and click IIF Files. You'll also be prompted to close all windows here before you can import the IIF file. So we could go ahead and click OK. And then you'll have this window pop up here. This just means that your IIF files have been imported successfully. And in this instance, a list item, once we click Import IIF, and let's click here, open it. And this is where it'll show you that you have successfully imported all of your transactions from that list. And over here, your list item has been successfully imported. And in this case, your list is a vendor and the transaction has been imported as well separately. So you could go ahead and click Done. Now this data shows up in your bill screen as a paid transaction. It shows up under vendor transactions specifically. So if we go back to home and go to the vendor center, you'll be able to see all these transactions that you just imported over through an IIF file. If you would like more information, you could always click right into it, and you can see all the information here, such as the merchant, the date of the transaction, the reference number, the amount for the transaction, and if I had selected a class, that would have imported here as well. Lastly, you'll also get the memo, which is the cardholder's name, what team or department they're on, their location, and what card their transaction took place on. Now, you may have also noticed that we had other different export types. So let's go back to RAMP and take a look at those. So let's go ahead and select these two to export over as a different file type. So we selected our two transactions to export. We'll click export over here. And this time you'll notice a button that also says export as. So if we click right into it, you'll see two options: export as QBD file and export as journal entries. We'll go ahead and export it with both types so you can see what both of them look like side by side. So let's open this QBD file export. And now let's go ahead and choose two more transactions to export as journal entries. So we'll go ahead and click export again. This time export as journal entries. So we'll go ahead and open both of these. And I'll drag them over so you can get a good look here. So putting these two downloads side by side, you'll be able to notice some key differences. So on the left-hand side, you will notice that these transactions, even though we exported only two, they're showing up 4 times here. And that is because your journal entries export will show you both the debit and the credit for the transactions. So here we have the debit and we have the credit for a single transaction, and this is for our second transaction. So your journal entries export will give you a bit more information, including the credit and debit, and you'll be able to see additional fields here. You'll also notice that these transactions come over fully coded with your accounting category as well as the accounting code. Now looking on the right-hand side, this is our QBD export. You'll notice here that this has a bit more limited information and it only shows the credits, no debits. You'll also notice that both of these transactions come over fully coded here. And lastly, for both of these, you'll notice that the receipt comes in as a link that pulls you back into RAMP. So our main difference between our QBD export and our journal entries export is just that your journal entries export provides a bit more information, including the credits and debits, whereas your QBD export only shows the credits. Also, you're able to maneuver these columns, delete them if you don't need them, and move them around should you need to. The way to import your QBD file or journal entries as an Excel file into QuickBooks Desktop is to go ahead and go straight into QuickBooks Desktop. And this time go to File, go to Utilities, and then go to Import and click Excel Files. So this will prompt you to add each of them as through list as a multiple list entries. So we could go ahead and click yes, and it'll bring us to that window. So one by one, you can definitely fill out this information by copy and pasting from these exports. Also, another thing to note here is no categorization step is required on the QuickBooks side, as this has been done on the accounting tab in RAMP already, and no separate import of vendors is required either. So now that we've walked through how to successfully import your transactions to QuickBooks Desktop, let's review a couple of other key items within RAMP. So let's go back to RAMP here. And here, now that we've exported some transactions and they're no longer on this page, you'll also notice that a button popped up here that says Export History. This button here provides an audit log for when transactions were exported and who from your team exported these transactions. So let's click into it and take a look. So as I mentioned, it'll show you when these transactions were exported and who from your company exported these transactions. If you click right into it, it'll even show you what file type it was and how many transactions were exported. You could always click on this download button to pull these transactions again. And as I mentioned, you could click into any one of them and they'll show you that they were downloaded in either an IIF file or CSV file. Another key feature here on this accounting page is this missing items area. This missing items area allows you to quickly see which transactions still need information prior to being exported. So we can click right into it and it'll open up a window to the right here. It'll show you all the transactions that are still missing key items, and you could remind people on the transaction level, or you could remind a person for all their transactions. Or lastly, you do have the option to remind everyone on this list all at once by clicking Remind All. It's a nice little nudge and lets them get an email just to come back into RAMP and upload any of their missing items. Another handy area here is our rules area. So if you click right into it here, you can easily view all merchant, category, department, and location rules all in one place. And we created one earlier on the category level. So if you click right into it, you'll be able to see the one that we created. You're also welcome to go down this category list and create rules using your chart of accounts, using the drop down here to find them and match it to the RAMP category. You can also do that on a merchant level. And then lastly, if you want to create your own rule, you could go ahead and click Create Rule. You'll choose your RAMP field, which will be location, category, merchant, or department, and match that to your specific accounting field from your chart of accounts, vendor list, class list, or customer job list. So now that we've reviewed this entire accounting page, let's go ahead and explore how to enable employee coding and downloading receipts. In order to do that, we'll have to first navigate over to your Transactions tab. This is where we'll come to download all of your receipts. Since our CSV exports only provide a link to receipts and bring you back to RAMP, if you ever want to come back into RAMP and pull receipts in a PDF, you can always do so in the manner that we're just going to walk through. So as I mentioned, you'll come to your Transactions tab. You'll select a date range if you don't want everything at once, as your Transactions tab is a running history of all your transactions within RAMP. So best practice here that we recommend is going ahead and clicking on date range and either clicking previous statement or current statement. I'm going to go ahead and go with previous statement, so we capture everything within my previous statement date. And we're now going to go over to this button to the right-hand side, click on it, and we're going to click download.zip receipts. This will send your email address an email with the link essentially a zip file that you'll be able to click right into and download your PDFs from. And that is just how simple it is, nothing else to this step. Now, to enable employee coding, which is the last item that we'll be going over, we'll go on to your settings all the way on the bottom left here. From your settings, we'll go ahead and click right into spend controls, and then required fields, and lastly, we'll click on the scratch pad edit icon near general expenses. This is your expense policy currently. You'll notice that you have already set up receipts and memo collection. And now that we've connected QuickBooks Desktop, you'll be able to see all the lists, including your chart of accounts that we have imported over. So if you want your employees to code their own transactions, when it comes to the chart of accounts, you would come over to accounting category, click on the drop down next to not required, and make this a required field. Next, you'll get to indicate if you want it to be used for a minimum amount or for all transactions. I'm going to go ahead and click on the minimum drop down and go for all transactions. That way, anytime my employees make a transaction, they'll be prompted to add in an accounting category. Also, please keep in mind that in order to fill out these additional fields, your employees can either do this through our app. We have it available for Apple as well as Google or Android. So you are able to go into the app and do this, or sign into the platform on a browser and go ahead and get it done that way. So these fields here, we can also make these required for our employees to fill out should we need them. Once you've gone ahead and made your requirements and all looks well, you can go ahead and click Save Changes. You'll also notice that a little button here pops up asking if you'd like to notify your team about the changes that you just made. If you'd like to notify your employees, you could go ahead and click on this button where it says Notify 14 Employees, and it just sends them a quick little email letting them know that now they are required to submit the following items for their expense policy. Or you could go ahead and click Don't Notify and let it be a nice little surprise. So I'm going to go ahead and click Don't Notify for now. And when it brings you back to this page, you have known that your expense policy has been saved successfully. So we have now fully completed your accounting setup process. So thank you so much for watching today.